Es gibt Dinge, die sind einfach besser zusammen. Sport und Podcasts, Stadion und Wurst, Bonucci und Chiellini und jetzt auch Sky und DAZN. Hol dir jetzt Sky und genieße auf Sky Q das beste Sportangebot an einem Ort. Mit der Bundesliga am Samstag, der zweiten Bundesliga, der Premier League, dem DFB-Pokal und der Formel 1 auf Sky. Sowie der Bundesliga am Freitag und Sonntag, der UEFA Champions League, der spanischen La Liga und US-Sport auf DAZN. Alles auf einer Plattform. Sichere dir jetzt Spitzenfußball mit Sky und DAZN auf Sky Q. Alles einfach auf Sky. Weitere Infos auf sky.de. Starting Grid, die Formel 1 Show mit Kevin Scheuren in Zusammenarbeit mit Motorsport-Total.com und Formel1.de.
Keep racing
Auf meinsportpodcast.de.
Einen schönen guten Tag und herzlich willkommen zu Starting Grid, eurem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Heute wird's Vintage. Wir starten unsere neue Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One. Ich freue mich sehr darauf, euch in der nächsten Zeit, ich hoffe einmal im Monat, das ist zumindest jetzt so mein Plan, eine Formel 1-Legende, einen ehemaligen Fahrer hier präsentieren zu können. Wir gehen so ein bisschen durch die Jahrzehnte und wollen herausbekommen, wie war die Formel 1 eigentlich früher? Also wir sehen ja viel, wie es heute ist, auch durch Netflix und Drive to Survive. Wir lesen viel auf den Portalen wie Motorsport-Total.com, Formel1.de und de.motorsport.com. Wir hören Podcasts wie Starting Grid, den Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Aber wie war es eigentlich früher? Und da möchte ich gerne mit den Männern sprechen, die damals die Geschichte mitgeschrieben haben, die aktiv waren, die gefahren sind, die Geschichten erlebt haben, die nur sie erlebt haben. Und die möchte ich hier erzählt haben, sozusagen. Und deswegen freue ich mich sehr, dass wir heute den Anfang machen, und zwar mit dem Formel-1-Weltmeister von 1978, Mario Andretti. Der Patron eines Formel 1, eines Motorsport-Clans, wie es ihn so in Amerika und auf der Welt nur selten gibt. Und wir sprechen sehr viel am Anfang über seine Herkunft. Er ist ja Einwanderer in die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika. Seine Familie ist aus Italien nach Amerika gekommen. Wir sprechen im ersten Abschnitt unter anderem auch über den amerikanischen Traum, den er gelebt hat. Denn wenn man nach dem American Dream sucht, from rags to riches, from dishwasher to millionaire, dann kommt man auch bei der Familie Andretti raus und bei Mario Andretti. Und das ist sehr schön gewesen. Damit starten wir jetzt diesen ersten Take. Und das Ganze ist auf Englisch. Und ich muss leider ein bisschen um euer Verständnis bitten. Wir hatten ein paar Tonschwierigkeiten. Also wenn ihr mich reden hört, dann hört ihr mich quasi so ein bisschen doppelt. Also das ist ein bisschen blöd gelaufen, hat ja keine Kopfhörer. Und deswegen ist es vielleicht hin und wieder mal ein bisschen störend, aber ich glaube, man kann es gut verstehen. Und ja, ich wünsche euch viel Spaß dabei. Ich hoffe, dass euch dieser Ausflug in die 70er und frühen 80er Jahre im Motorsport in die Formel 1 gefällt. Würde mich freuen, wenn ihr uns Feedback zukommen lasst über die diversen Gruppen. Alle Informationen dazu stehen ja in den Shownotes. Ja, und jetzt geht's los mit Mario Andretti hier bei Vintage, The Past of Formula One, unserer neuen Serie hier bei Starting Grid. Ich weiß gar nicht, ob ich es gesagt habe. Mein Name ist Kevin Scheuren, aber das wisst ihr ja. Also, viel Spaß. At this time, I am very happy, very honored, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome the 1978 world champion of Formula One, Mario Andretti. Hello, Mario.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
How are you? That's the most important question right now.
Things are good. I'm okay. Actually, I'm even better now that the season is about to begin for us. Obviously, this weekend, Formula One, and then IndyCar, just a little bit after that. Been looking forward to these activities, as you can imagine. This lockdown has been very difficult on everyone, but we want to get back to work, back to traveling, and so that's around the corner.
How did you take the pandemic? I mean, you're used to being away. You're used to traveling around, being at tracks. How did you take this period of halt?
Well, I was even last year. I did almost all of the IndyCar races and so forth, and I did some traveling, but everything restricted, however, so for everyone. And it's difficult, it's frustrating, but we have to just look forward now. And I'm already vaccinated, so I feel that I have that going for me. I should be able to go anywhere that I need to be. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, as they say.
Well, you're much further than we in Germany. So congratulations to you in America. Coming to you, you're such a legend. You're a living legend of Formula One, at least to me and to many of our listeners. How did it all start? How did you get infected with the bug of motorsport?
Well, that's a good question, but I became infected with that bug when I was still living in Italy. I was very young, and I lived there the first 15 years of my life. And as you can imagine, I was I was a teenager in the 50s. I was born in 1940. So again, the World Championship started officially in 1951. And of course, Italy being very prominent there, in Formula One, Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, and of course you had Mercedes in the mid-50s as well. But you had all of these notable champions of the era. Alberto Ascari was a current champion in the mid-50s, 53, 54 in Italy. And as a young lad, like my brother, I had a twin brother, Aldo. We both just became fascinated with motor racing. And we followed it every way possible that we could. And we finally saw our very first race as young lads, the Italian Grand Prix in 1954, 1 year before we came to America. And at that point, I think the dream was cemented. It was, this is what I want to be. This I want to follow. I had no idea, obviously, how we're going to go about it. But it became really something that stayed with me. And we came to America 2 years after we arrived there. We started building a race car to race locally with some buddies, some friends, and 4 years after arriving here, I started racing in 59. And my career went from 1959 officially to 1994. And then I did 3 more 24 hours of Le Mans, but it was uninterrupted pretty much. And always in the back of my mind, even though I was in America and things were going really well for me here, I had Formula One in the back of my mind all along. And you can see I had my first experience in Formula One in 1968 with Lotus, and then my first victory in 71 with Ferrari. I was doing it part-time because I was so committed here in America. But anyway, Formula One was always front and center in my mind, that I had to devote full time in my career sometime.
For me, I will never forget my first time at the Formula One race. It was Spain, Barcelona, 2002. Of course, Michael won. So happy German kid. I was 11 years old at that time. I just found a photo at my parents' house, me with glasses and the Schumacher cap on and a jeans jacket I would never wear today. Can you remember your first? I remember the sensations I had at the track. Do you remember the first time you've been in 1954 in Italy at the track, Formula One race?
I remember that very well, because it was a momentous time for us, to be able to see it firsthand. Because up to then we had seen someone film, newsreels and so forth, but to be there and just get the smell, of those racing cars. And unfortunately, we were not able to get close, to any of the drivers or anything. It was impossible. But at the same time, just to be there and watch my hero, Alberto Ascari, fighting, with Fangio, Kling, and with Mercedes at the time, was just a very inspiring, to say the least. And as you say, just something, electrifying, that you feel. I wanted to emulate my hero. That was my objective in life. And so these are very special moments because you remember forever. I'm 81 years old now, and I think, I have a vivid recollection of those moments.
When you came to the States, just for you personally, how much of a culture shock was it to come to the States from Italy?
How much what?
Culture shock. How much culture shock?
Well, for us kids, not so much, because young kids can adapt quickly. The culture shock was for my parents, mostly, as you can imagine. Before we came to America, even though we were in a refugee camp, still, we went to school, proper schools, and I had 3 years of English in school. You have a choice of languages, and I think that was beneficial to have that foundation when we arrived. So when we arrived there was an uncle on my mother's side, actually an uncle that had a filling station where we used to hang out and have been able to have a connection, with a lot of people, and we learned the language fairly quickly. Quite honestly, we arrived in June, and by the time it was school time, we knew enough, of the language to be able to deal with it. Okay, and but going back to adapted to the culture. For us kids, it was not a problem whatsoever, quite honestly. Of course, in school, everybody look, okay, they're foreign kids and whatever, but actually, a lot of the other kids were very curious, what we were all about. From Italy, this and that, and small town. But overall, we made friends, and life just continued quite nicely, actually.
Would you say you lived the American dream?
Kevin, I think I am the perfect example of the American dream. I always say this, and it's clearly, when you look back, the opportunities that I had as a young lad coming here. And my father always said, too, we're going to America to be able to provide, opportunities, mainly for you kids. I had twin brother Aldo, and I had an older sister, Anna Maria. And that's the way he put it. And actually, that was prophetic, because if we would have stayed in Italy, I don't know whether I could have pursued, my objectives, my goals, like I did here. Here, immediately, I started working toward getting started, in this racing, and so I'm so grateful, as you can imagine, for what America provided for us. No question about it. So going back to that, I definitely, I represent the American dream for sure.
So many people think you're such an inspiring man, with that story you tell each and every time you're doing interviews, and which is basically why this is such a great honor for me, because you were asked so many questions. So I hope I don't bore you with anyone you all along. Why did you have such a great affinity for open wheel racing? When you look through your vita, your curriculum vitae, there are so many open wheel classes you participated in. Of course, you did Le Mans successfully, but why did you follow the path of open wheel racing much more?
Well, open wheel is what I originally fell in love with the most, because I feel it's the purest part of our sport, quite honestly. An open wheel racing car, Formula One car, Indy car, is a totally purpose just for that, just like a fighter aircraft. And a sports car is a derivative of something, that you could technically drive on the road, or even a stock car is a modified version, but the open wheel car is absolutely the missile, the one that is as pure as can be. And that was, I feel my specialty, but our sport is rich of other disciplines, and sports prototypes, I think, is very exciting, to say the least. And then, there's here in America, the stock cars, NASCAR stock cars is also, it's a big series and very important. So from that standpoint, created a curiosity for me once I reached a certain level where I could, when I would express a desire, I could get a good drive, with a good team to be able to experience the other side. And my objective, at least my mindset, was not just to drive, to try to win, because that's the ultimate satisfaction. And I was presented with a lot of those opportunities, and I welcomed that. I just wanted to be in a race car of any type. Just like even, trying, Pikes Peak hill climb, which is something similar to rallying. I never did proper rallying, but that was it. It was a dirt track up in the mountains and so forth. And after the third time, I won that one, taking many, many risks like an idiot. But all of those events, brought me an incredible amount of satisfaction, and I felt that fulfillment, throughout my career. That it kept me curious throughout. It was never blasé. Oh no, another. It was always something to look forward to, and I had no problem staying motivated. In fact, at the end of the day, I don't think I could get enough of what I was doing, so because you look at the amount of activity that I was doing, even while I was doing Formula One full time, even in my championship year, I was still doing Indy cars. I was doing the stock car IROC series, which I won as well that year. And so I was busy, everywhere. Whenever there was a weekend off technically from my main activity, I would fill it up with something else. And that was my life, that was my career, and that's what I enjoyed. On a personal side, it was potentially some sacrifice from the family standpoint, but I had a wonderful wife, who supported me every step of the way. And I don't think until later I realized how important that was for me, and how much of an asset she was for me in my life and in my career. We were together over 56 years, and I gave her so much credit because family was very important to me. Also, because we had a family, we had kids. We were very young, and I was still, just going through the levels of the sport, and then I had a responsibility there with young children, with Michael and Jeff, especially, but she was there solid, just keeping me serene in my job, and doing, keeping everything together. And so there were many aspects of life, it's not just the professional, but it's the personal side. And we were able to just be able to compromise to some degree. And she never made me feel like I was so selfish, which I was, no question, because I was pursuing something that I loved so much, and she knew it. And I was sacrificing some of the other side, the personal side to some degree. I'll tell you a little story actually that exemplifies this, because my older son, Michael, when he was in school, he was about 7 years old or so. The teacher said, because I was always traveling, and the teacher was asking the kids, said, "What does your dad do?" And then, okay, the dad is a pharmacist, the dad is a plumber, the dad or whatever. So I came to Michael, they said, "What does your dad do?" "My dad goes to the airport and makes bread." He said, what? Well, the reason he said that, because I was always, with the suitcase, packed up, and he said, Dad, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to the airport, gotta make the bread. That was the saying here, you have to earn. So I gotta make the bread. So he's going to the airport and makes the bread. So that's how the kids looked at it. It's kind of an interesting saying here, but just to give you an idea, just how things were at the time.
It's not that far different from German mentality. I mean, you had to hustle if you want to be successful. You had to hustle. Did you get that from your parents? Were your parents hustlers from your get-go?
Well, I think my dad, in so many ways, through the war, after the war, there were a lot of challenges before him, because the reason we wound up in a refugee camp is because the area where I was born, the Eastern Peninsula, became part of Yugoslavia after the war, and Italy lost that territory. And then, in order to maintain the Italian citizenship, we left everything behind, and we wound up in a refugee camp. And my dad he always made sure that the family, that we were cared for. I was never cold. I was never hungry. As kids, we were always well dressed. We went to school, and my dad always did whatever job. He always doing the odd jobs to make sure that we were cared for, and that was a shining example, of course, in that respect. So, and again, you can say he was a hustler. Why? Because he never needed any charity from anyone. And under the toughest moments, he provided. He made things happen. And but for me, I was driven by the love and passion of what I wanted to do, the sport. When I was a young lad, my objective was to have to provide for the family through motor racing, not to have another side job or anything else. I wanted to do that's my job. And that in itself, it was quite a challenge, as you can imagine. And I had to hustle. Yeah, I like that, though, because I had clear objective. I'm doing what I love, but I got to make money, and you can't make money unless you win. So all of that, was very important, as you can imagine.
Ich weiß nicht, wie es euch geht, aber diese Geschichte, wie Mario Andretti mit seiner Familie nach Amerika kommt und versucht, den amerikanischen Traum zu leben, die hat mich total berührt. Also diese Wurzeln mal zu hören, wie das alles zustande gekommen ist in einer sehr turbulenten Zeit in der Welt, wie sie nach Amerika gekommen sind, um da wirklich einen Neuanfang zu machen, wie viel der Vater gearbeitet hat, um der Familie was zu ermöglichen und wohin das geführt hat. Das war ein super toller Einstieg, und wir machen jetzt eine kurze Pause und dann geht's gleich weiter. Ihr kommt dann wieder direkt in das Interview zurück. Dann geht es um seinen Indianapolis-Sieg. Das war auch ein ganz, ganz besonderer Moment für ihn, das werdet ihr hören. Und sein Formel-1-Debüt an einer ganz besonderen Strecke, die mit seiner Anfangsgeschichte, die er erzählt hat, vorhin auch zu tun hat. Also bleibt dran, hier bei Vintage, The Past of Formula One im Rahmen von Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de.
Kennst du schon?
Musikantensteudel, eine musikalische Zeitreise mit Alex Steudel.
Die Band, um die es heute geht, heißt Fisher Z. Die britische New Wave Band steht für meine erste Begegnung mit Musik. Es war das erste Konzert meines Lebens, wenn man Nana Mouskouri nicht mitzählt.
Denn deren weiße Rosen aus Athen haben Alex nicht zum Wiedersehen bewegt. Er hat sich anderer Musik zugewendet. Die hört ihr hier.
meinmusikpodcast.de. Sport für die Ohren. In deinem Podcatcher und auf meinsportpodcast.de.
What was more important to you? Winning the race, or winning the admiration of the fans?
Winning the race, obviously, because the admiration comes later. Not that, I must tell you, it's very, very important to have the approval of the fans. The fan base is magic for all of us. Trust me. Without the fans, you almost feel like you don't exist. It's so important. But it's almost like the ultimate satisfaction to have the approval of someone watching your work. What's better if you have a job and somebody can, hey, you're really doing a good job at your work. You know what I mean? It's that inner satisfaction. And the fans provide that for us. I mean, after all, it's show business, and just like now, some of the races that we've had in the last year, with no fans and so forth, even though you have TV, okay, but no fans, no physical fans there you could touch and look in the eyes. Any driver will tell you that there was something huge missing, for sure. I remember last year, for instance, at Indianapolis, where you usually have 300,000 people there. I mean, it's just amazing, that event. And on race day, there was no one in the grandstand. It was eerie. Okay, the drivers, they still have to do their job and so forth, but it took something huge out of you. It was something empty. And so, going back to the importance of the fans, yes, it's huge. It's paramount. A sport, any professional sport needs that. And that's what we've been missing. And that's what we want back. We want our fans right there to enjoy what we're doing, so we can show off, if you will.
Well, I think some people say that the noise of the cars are important, but I think the noise of the fans enhances the noise of the cars, if it makes sense.
All of it works. It's all part of the spectacle, no question about it. I mean, the excitement. I know that how much the noise was, when I was a young lad, we go to a race or something, and when you're behind the grandstand before you go in, if there's practice, you hear the noise of the race cars go by. Wow. Oh, you can't wait to go out there and see what's happening, So I think, no question, the noise is half the spectacle. You saw that even in Formula One, when they went from normally aspirated to hybrid engines, where we lost a big RPM, the sound, it was like an opera, for us. Music that just give you chills, just when a Formula One car went by 18,000 RPM. So when they went to a hybrid, back down to 12,500 RPM, made a big difference. Even so, that's still interesting, but the sound of those days were just spectacular. And so that's all of these factors obviously are part of what makes motor racing as a sport, so attractive and exciting.
So this is basically my vintage series here on Starting Grid, the past of Formula One. We did not talk about Formula One at all until now, and we will still not be talking about Formula One because I would be remissing if I would not talk to you about Indianapolis 1969, your win in the Indianapolis 500. As being an Italo-American citizen at the end of the day, winning the Indy 500, how proud were you to have won this race?
Oh, extremely proud for sure, because it's the only race that I actually knew about when I was still in Italy. That was happening in America. In fact, at that time, I thought that was the only race that was happening here in America. So again, it's arguably probably the best known race around the world, because it's been around for over 100 years. And so from a driver standpoint, it's so extremely valuable to have it under your belt because it's unfair, in my opinion, but many of the careers are judged by your performance, especially the IndyCar driver at Indianapolis. It seemed like, that's an end all. It's arguably more important to win that one race than winning the national championship. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. In 1965 was my rookie year in the IndyCar series, and I won the national championship. later on, I was invited to one of the famous talk shows, with Johnny Carson, one of the big personalities here. And I was so proud that I was the youngest at the time national champion at the time. But I was Rookie of the Year at Indianapolis. So when I was introduced, I was not introduced as the IndyCar national champion. I was introduced as the Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year. And that one actually upset me because I figured I'm national champion, which is the whole season. And here they're highlighting Indianapolis, and I was only Rookie of the Year. I finished third. Jimmy Clark won. But it also told me how important that race was. So going back to winning it in 1969, it was a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. I felt that I just had to have it done because, when you look at the record in 65, I finished third. And then in 66, I was on pole position. 67, I was pole position, and I went out early, mechanical problems. 68, I went out another engine blow. In 69 was the second one after 5 years, the second one that I finished. And then I won it. And I figured, what a relief, because it was also very satisfying for me to win it for Andy Granatelli, STP, because that was the end all for him. He only cared about Indianapolis, and he tried it so many times with the turbine cars, with everything, with a lot of out of the box thinking, something always special. And here I wind up winning it for him as well the first time, which was really satisfying. So, yeah, going back to your question, was that big for me? Yes, it's so many different levels. It was huge for me. Yeah.
Is it quote unquote easier to win the Indianapolis 500 today than it was in your time?
Oh, of course. I think it's quite honestly, again, it has the same value, in my opinion, career-wise for any driver. And, for today, however, the drivers have a much better chance of finishing because of the rules. In those days, it was difficult because there were no set engine rule as far as the limit of RPM. So we used to stretch the engines a lot more. And the biggest problem that I had was because I dominated that race, a few times and always, I had some engine problems. And same thing happened even to my son, Michael. He was dominating, races, and then he couldn't finish. So today it's the drivers have a better chance of finishing, which is great. But the importance of getting it done, yes, it's huge today, in my opinion, as much as ever.
Did the win of the Indianapolis 500 solidify your spot in Formula One?
I actually, I don't think that it hurt me in any way. But I already had 3 national championships here under my belt before I asked Colin Chapman that I would be interested in doing Formula One at the end of the season in 1968, which is the year before. And he gave me that opportunity. God bless him, because I always tell the story, and I think it's worth repeating, that at the end of the prize giving in 1965, when Jim Clark won and I finished third, when Colin was leaving, I said, Colin, someday I would like to do Formula One. And he said, Mario, when you think you're ready, you call me and I will have a car for you. Now, can you imagine how important that was for me to hear those words? And I did that. At the end of 1968, I said, Colin, I would like to do the last 2 races of the season, which is Monza and Watkins Glen. And he said, I'll have a car for you. And he did. And Monza, we had an issue, because I did test and we tested very well. And but I was going for the championship in the Indy cars, and there was a race on the dirt track on a Saturday of that Monza weekend. And I had to, come back here in the States to race and then go back for the Grand Prix. And I qualified on Friday, just the first session in the morning. And then I left for the States, and I ran the race here Saturday. In fact, I finished second to AJ Foyt, and then went back to Italy. But then there was a protest because of the 24-hour rule, which was agreed that the organizer were going to waive the rule because we knew that it could be an issue. Instead, somehow it was protest and upheld. So my car was on the grid, but they did not let me start. So the following race was the Watkins Glen Grand Prix, and I put the car on pole there, for my very first actual race. So it was a very auspicious, very good beginning for me, with Colin. It gave me a lot of confidence that, yes, I'm loving this. I love the feel of the Formula One car, which is the first time that I ever had, any reference to it, and so again, yeah, it was a very good beginning for me in that. And I was offered the following year a full Formula One seat by Lotus. And I could not accept it because of my commitments in the States here. And quite honestly, we were earning so much more financially here than you could in Formula One in those days. And actually, Emerson Fittipaldi took my seat in Formula One. Yeah, it was Emerson. And then, so later on, then I drove for Ferrari. And then, of course, I won the first Formula One race in South Africa in 1971. And I was offered also a full-time Ferrari. I couldn't accept it because, again, my commitments here. And but somewhere in the back of my mind, I figure during my career, I have to choose a time where I can devote full-time to Formula One. And up to that point, I was doing it on and off, and everything. But and that's the way my career went. So in 1975, that's when I decided, now is the time. I mean, I was already 35 years old, and said, now I have to commit full time to Formula One, and that's when I decided to do that in 1975.
Going back to 1954, your first race in Italy, was it also in Monza?
In 1954, yeah. Yes, it was the Italian Grand Prix.
So when you came there again in 1968 to drive there, did you look at the stands you were standing on?
Absolutely.
How did I get into the car right now?
There was not even stands there. There was just before the Parabolica, there was like on a hill. It was in the grass. And they have some stands now, some they call bleachers, But at that time, we were just out on the grass and watching. From that, going by, I said, okay, that's where I was. This is it.
Oh, amazing.
Monza had something very special for me, especially when I won there. It was just huge because I won Monza the first time with Alfa Romeo, the 1,000 kilometers in Monza with Arturo Mesario and Alfa Romeo, which was very special, as you can imagine. But winning the Grand Prix in 1977 was was spectacular for me because that was something that brought me back from the beginning. That brought me back right to the beginning, and how wonderful that is. To be so fortunate.
So when you came to Formula One, Colin Chapman was a great mentor for you. You hold him in high regard.
Again, I think timing was perfect to some degree because when I arrived, when I finally did a deal with Colin Chapman in 76, he did not have and he told me, he said, I don't have a very good car. He was apologizing to me. And I said, don't worry, Colin, we'll make it better. We'll just work hard and make it better, which as the season progressed, we did make it better. And then I won the last race of that season in Japan, in Fuji. It was a weird race because of the wet, a lot of rain and so forth. But I was on pole in the dry. So, that is satisfaction for me, because a lot of people say, oh, you're lucky you won in the wet. But I had a big fight with obviously with James Hunt and so forth. And I won, over him. And so that was a great satisfaction. Then, of course, in 77 and 78, we, the development, Colin Chapman obviously put his genius at work, and we started out with just some, very fabulous, with the ground effects and so on and so forth. And it didn't start out to be that, but because of the design of the car, we just cultivated that. As a matter of fact, the big breakthrough on the ground effects was actually at Hockenheim during the test. And so I remember that we didn't have the skirts on the car, and at Hockenheim, the curve that connected the two long straightaways, the big right-hander. I remember about midway through the corner when we were getting, a lot of deflection on the chassis, we got a lot of roll. The left side was closing down. I was getting a lot more downforce. And I remember that Colin sent the mechanics to a store, in town to pick up some plastic strips to be able to close the gap on the body. And that's when all of a sudden we thought, we gained a lot of downforce, and that's how this whole thing began. And so there was a lot of great times developing, this the ground effect system. But like I said, Germany was a big breakthrough during that test in Hockenheim. And as you can see, I had a fabulous car in 77 also, which in fact, I think actually I could have won more races in 77 than even 78 because, but we had so much engine issues. Cosworth was, they were trying very hard, to give me everything they could, but they were experimenting too much, with my engines, and we had so many failures while just leading handily the races. And but nevertheless, I was with the right team at the time, as you can imagine, with Colin. I owe Colin a great deal, always will, for embracing me at the right time. And accomplishing the world championship was my ultimate goal, as you can imagine, because that's where my love for the sport started, about Formula One.
Ich weiß nicht, wie es euch geht und ob ihr so eine Situation auch schon mal hattet, wenn ihr so langfristig irgendwo in irgendeinem Feld in eurer Arbeit erfolgreich wart, aber man erinnert sich immer nur an Punkt X, also irgendeinem Erlebnis, wo man sagt, so, ja, das hat Person XY gut gemacht. Also so ähnlich muss es ja Mario Andretti gegangen sein, als er damals Indianapolis gewonnen hat, aber eigentlich ja auch schon National Champion war, also schon die Meisterschaft gewonnen hat, und da hat keiner drüber geredet. Also da merkt man ja mal, wie wichtig dieses Indy 500 ist und was für einen Stellenwert das hat in der Öffentlichkeit. Oder wenn du dann Dritter geworden bist, dass du dann einfach Dritter geworden bist, oder wenn du Zweiter geworden bist, bist du halt der erste Verlierer gewesen, so gesehen, ja. Also es zählt am Ende nur der Sieg, ja, aber auch in der Formel 1. Und da zu hören, diesen Willen schon zu haben, Weltmeister werden zu wollen, weil es einfach was Besonderes darstellt. Und man muss ja immer bedenken, dass Mario Andretti ja nur Teilzeit-Formel-1-Fahrer war. Das erzählt er ja auch im Interview noch oder immer mal wieder. Und dass er immer wieder hin und her geflogen ist und sich dann irgendwann gedacht hat, so jetzt muss es soweit sein und jetzt muss ich komplett rüber. Das werdet ihr im Verlauf des Interviews auch noch hören, wie er dann 78 Weltmeister geworden ist. Aber jetzt machen wir erstmal eine kurze Pause und dann geht es gleich weiter nach der Pause mit der Stimmung im Paddock. Also wie war das eigentlich damals im Fahrerlager? Wie haben die Leute da getickt? Was war da für eine Stimmung? Wir sprechen über seine Rivalen und über einen ganz besonderen Freund von ihm später, nämlich Niki Lauda. Niki Lauda, eine der größten Formel-1-Legenden aller Zeiten, vor einigen Jahren ja leider von uns gegangen. Und da hat er sehr rührende Geschichten zu erzählen. 76 ja, der Unfall von Lauda auf der Nordschleife am Nürburgring. Und da habe ich natürlich gefragt, wie sich sein Verhältnis von ihm zu ihm, das Verhältnis untereinander verändert hat, vor und nach seinem Unfall auf der Strecke und neben der Strecke. Also bleibt dran, hier bei Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Dann geht es gleich direkt weiter mit Mario Andretti, dem Formel 1 Weltmeister von 1978 in unserer Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One.
Chip and Charge.
Der Tennis-Podcast mit Andreas Thies
Und Philipp Joubert.
Das olympische Tennisturnier ist vorbei und es brachte mit Alexander Zverev den ersten deutschen Einzel-Olympiasieger seit Steffi Graf 1988. Belinda Bencic hat bei den Frauen das Einzelgold geholt und es gab ganz viele weitere Geschichten, auch Geschichten, die so ein bisschen anrühren. In der neuen Ausgabe von Chip and Charge, dem Tennis Talk auf meinsportpodcast.de, haben Philipp Joubert und ich mal alles zusammengefasst.
meinsportpodcast.de.
How was the paddock back then? I mean, we have all watched Rush. We have all seen some documentaries. But out of your perspective, how was the paddock and the camaraderie maybe between the drivers back then?
I think I always felt camaraderie. I don't care where I went, and there were always these characters. You know, it was fun actually. Off the track, we used to just get together, and you know, no matter whether we were in South America or something, or South Africa, we go on the beach or by the pool, recreate, and it was play jokes on one another. Yes, no question that there was camaraderie, and we enjoyed our lives that way. Made a lot of close friends. As you can imagine, these were the precious friendships that were formed because of that. And again, it was a great life. Today, I mean, when I go into a Formula One paddock, I feel like I'm coming home again, because if it's not even the drivers, because, you know, drivers are a different generation, but many of the mechanics, some of the mechanics or engineers are still there from those times. And it's almost like we're just, seeing each other finally, after, a period of time. And it brings back all those fond memories, if you will. So, again, this really warm feeling for me anytime that I go to a Formula One race, for sure, for all those reasons.
Who was your best friend during your times in Formula One? Did you travel with someone specifically, or was it everybody came by himself and they met at the track?
Well, we were all from different countries and so forth, so I traveled pretty much back and forth unless I had a family with me by myself. But when we arrived on the scene, probably my best friend as a teammate was Ronnie Peterson, because not only Ronnie and Gunnar Nielsen, for some reason we really bonded as socially even, and I spent time, our family, with them, and they would come to the States and would spend some time with us, maybe before an event. So we had that connection, and that wasn't always the case, but going back, I can easily select one individual. I mean, the other one that I was quite close to was Clay Regazzoni. He was quite the character too. And then and we enjoyed each other's company, wherever we went, and so but there were others, Bruce McLaren was also, in his day was, he meant a great deal to me because I learned so much from him, even during the Ford Le Mans program, during the testing when I was really trying to learn about the technique of road racing and so forth. I befriended him. And we spent a lot of time together, like, going to dinner, having outside of the track and then talking. And he was always very, very generous with his information, with his, to give me the tips that he knew about, certain techniques about slow corner, rotating the car and all of that. And so, again, I gained, so much from friends like that. And they remain, in my mind, with very warm memories and rich memories, if you will.
I asked my listeners to get some questions in. So I will give you one right now from Marcel. He wants to know who was your fiercest rival, your fiercest competitor in Formula One?
Well, it depends. Depends the time, Ronnie was one because a lot of people say, oh, yeah, he was number two. Ronnie, the decision that we had at the beginning of the year was whoever would be at the head of in points between the two of us, the one could protect the other, from mid-season on. But we were fairly equal. I was in front pretty much, and but nothing kept him from passing me, and then maybe relinquishing, maybe backing off and let me back by. And we stood many times. I remember, I'll give you an example. In Zandvoort, I had my exhaust system, my exhaust pipe broke on the right side, and it burnt the body underneath. So I lost a lot of the ground effect on my right side of the car. And so I had a very difficult time, staying in front of him, and he was pushing me and he tried to pass me 2 or 3 times, and I was chopping him, and we fought really hard. And then he said, Mario, says, why didn't you just let me go by, and then I would have let you go by later? I said, no, you got to earn it, So we had fun with that, we kid about it, we talk about it. But, when they talk about fierce competitors, when I broke into Formula One, Jackie Stewart was the world champion. He was the man at the time, and for me to be able to be pole at like the first race, and he was second, and then when I won my very first race in South Africa, he was second to me, and then 2 weeks later we had a non-championship race in California, the Equestrian Grand Prix. We had 2 100-mile races with Formula One and Formula 5000 together. And I won both, and Jackie Stewart finished second both times to me. So, things could not be better, in that sense, because and every decade, almost every season has somebody that is better than you. And Niki Lauda was another one. He was very steady, very, just correct and solid. He's another one that if you finished ahead of him, you did a good job, that day. But there were some others, when I look back, I feel that I was so fortunate to have had the opportunity to be on the same track with so many wonderful drivers, so many great drivers of the time, real icons.
Great segue to a question from David. He wants to know your opinion on Niki Lauda, both on the track and off the track. And how did he change, or did he change at all to you after his accident in 1976?
No, here's the thing about Niki Lauda. Obviously, he was, from the very beginning that I came in contact, he was always a protagonist. He was always there, strong. And but after the accident, what I gained so much respect for him is that he acted just like if nothing happened. Because as you can see, he rejoined, he came back, to Formula One 6 months later, which was amazing. It was amazing that he could, just like, in Japan, for instance, under the worst possible conditions, because, he had, the burns affected his tear ducts, in his eyes and so forth. And when he arrived there, I was such in awe, of his courage that he had to come back so soon. And some people, criticize him for pulling out of the race because of the condition he couldn't see. People don't realize that under those conditions, the visibility, normal visibility, is about 20%. And he, with his tears that he had, he couldn't see anything. He probably could see maybe 5%. And he was smart enough, intelligent enough, to pull over. And it cost him the world championship by 1 point, as we know. And from that point, I had so much appreciation and inspiration from somebody like that. To be intelligent, have that good sense. Not to be stupid, not to go out there and risk inevitably. We always risk, but he knew when to back off. And it told me a lot about his character, and what I like about Niki also was the fact that he pulled no punches, you know what I mean? He said it the way it was, it was very, very direct with his conversation. And he was a good guy to talk to and go to, said, okay, ask for opinion and so forth, I feel I had a very good relationship with him. I have, photos with him in recent times also, that when he was, active with the Mercedes team, since, he obviously, he was responsible, I think, for getting Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes and so forth. And he had that good feel, Niki was a good man. He was a tremendous asset to Formula One, no question.
It's interesting. He's an integral part of getting Michael Schumacher to Ferrari and also getting Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes. So the biggest two dynasties of the modern times.
Yeah, well, he knew how to judge quality, in someone, and he was right. He was right.
Ich glaube, eines der schönsten, kann man sagen, Emotionen, aber Haltungen, die man gegenüber Menschen haben kann, ist halt Respekt, respektvoller Umgang und auch dieser Respekt und diese Ehrerbietung eigentlich, wenn man über Menschen spricht, mit denen man früher was zu tun hatte, mit denen man, gegen die man gefahren ist, ja, also es waren Konkurrenten, aber eigentlich haben sich daraus Freundschaften entwickelt, weil man ja auf irgendeiner Weise auf einer Wellenlänge lag und das dann zu hören, wie Mario Andretti über Niki Lauda spricht, über seine Intelligenz, aber über auch seine Weitsicht, als er in Fuji aus dem Auto gestiegen ist bei diesem wahnsinnigen Regenschauer, hat ihm den Weltmeistertitel gekostet, aber jede Menge Respekt gebracht, also da nicht auf Teufel komm rauszufahren, wenn er sich nicht wohlgefühlt hat und dann im späteren Verlauf auch zu hören, wie dieses Auge von Niki Lauda sich eigentlich entwickelt hat für Talente, für Situationen. Also Michael Schumacher hat er federführend mit zu Ferrari gebracht. Er hat Lewis Hamilton natürlich zu Mercedes gebracht, hat damit die zwei größten Dynastien der Neuzeit kreiert eigentlich, also geholfen, sie zu kreieren und seinen Stempel aufgedrückt, aber auch interessant zu hören, wie Mario Andretti über Rivalen spricht und wie er über die Menschen spricht, die er auch hoch angesehen hat im Paddock. Und ja, das ist einfach eine irre Zeit gewesen, glaube ich, so diese späten 70er Jahre in der Formel 1, einfach auch weil die gesamte Gesellschaft sich einfach so ein Stück weit verändert hat, viel offener war und einfach, ja, so richtige Lebemänner hervorgebracht hat, so Formel-1-Fahrer als Lebemänner, da einfach durch die Welt gezogen sind und ja, um Punkte gefahren haben. Und das größte Ziel eines Formel-1-Fahrers ist es natürlich, Weltmeister zu werden. Und 1978 hat es Mario Andretti geschafft, Formel-1-Weltmeister zu werden. Aber das war eine Weltmeisterschaft, die bei ihm auf tragische Weise sehr gemischte Gefühle hervorgerufen hat. Und das wird das Kernthema des nächsten Abschnitts sein. Wie hat er sich gefühlt, als er 78 Weltmeister geworden ist? Aber dass eigentlich viele Leute gesagt haben, dass sein Teamkollege Ronnie Peterson viel schneller war und ja, er ja auch sein Leben gelassen hat am Ende. Und ja, das wird gleich ein sehr emotionaler Take, kann ich euch schon mal darauf vorbereiten. Da geht es dann direkt nach der nächsten Pause rein. Bleibt also dran, hier bei Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Mario Andretti, der Weltmeister von 1978 in unserer Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One.
Martin hat schon bewiesen, dass er alle möglichen Turniere gewinnen kann.
Nur Golf.
This is the final game of the 144th Open Championship.
Auf meinsportpodcast.de.
In dem Fall wollte ich mir das nicht nehmen lassen.
Nur Golf.
It says a lot about the European Tour and how far we've come over the years.
Auf meinsportpodcast.de. Meinsportpodcast.de ist Sport für die Ohren. Like uns auf Facebook.
If there would have been social media during your time in Formula One, who would have been worst off?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to go there.
Oh, come on, just a little tidbit. Give me something.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
It can be fun. It can be a funny one. It doesn't have to be a political one who would cross the lines on Twitter maybe, but someone
But
who
it was probably just the stupid things that we used to do off the track, and the big practical jokes that we used to play on one another, things like that. I remember we were in South Africa. We went to in Pelabora to a safari, where you can drive through into what was it, Lion Country Safari or something like that, where you could see the lions or tigers could come right to the car and so forth. And so it was Ronnie, it was John Watson and a couple of the other guys. We just went out there, and you had to be very careful. There were certain rules you had to obey and so forth when the animals would come to the car. So I decided to just open the door. You're not supposed to do that. And then go out there so I could pet this lion. And then the boys, to put a joke, they closed the door and they pulled away and they left me out there by myself. And and I don't know how the lion didn't eat me up because, one of the guards there, they came over and they had a big rifle, to be sure. And they were, very upset because, this is not supposed to happen. Those other idiots, just pulled away with the car and left me there all by myself. Stupid things like that we used to do.
Mario Andretti, the lion tamer.
The lion
tamed him. You've tamed.
I was talking to this lion very calmly, and I said, "Oh, I like you, and everything." So.
Who was the most underrated driver you've driven against in Formula One?
Coming off, I don't know. It's
many would say John Watson.
I think John Watson. I think he was one, and to some degree, I think he had his good days, But I think that Carlos Reutemann, in my opinion, because Carlos was tremendously fast, and somehow I don't know why he never won a world championship, and I felt that I respected him a lot. I felt that he was definitely world championship material, as much as anyone I could think of. Obviously, we all know Sterling Moss was one. That they were certainly not underrated. I was just unlucky. I think the other was Chris Amon was another one that was very unlucky. But Carlos Reutemann, I don't know if it was unlucky or what it was. But for some reason, I think even that year when Alan Jones won, the championship, they were teammates. He was quicker. He was always, quicker than Alan, and somehow he never pulled it off. And I never could understand, why that was happening. But he was one that I thought deserved to be world champion.
When you won the world championship and you were able to let it sink in, what did you feel? What did you feel when you realized you've become the Formula One world champion?
Yeah, well, Kevin, it should have been, the happiest moment of my career for sure. And but the fact that Ronnie died, after that race, I could not celebrate for a long time, and I never could celebrate properly the moment because I lost that, the moment, if you will. Again, we're just a double-edged sword, if you will, the best way I can explain it. Inner satisfaction, no question, and I felt blessed that it did happen. But at the same time, the misfortune of Ronnie was something overwhelming that took a lot away from the joy, the possible joy that I should have had at that moment.
Did that change your perception of Formula One, the risks, your own attitude towards Formula One? Did it change in any way the time after Ronnie died?
No, I certainly am unfortunate this was not the first one. I lost some close friends. My closest friend, Billy Foster, we were rooming together, here in the States when he was killed. And it's not that you develop, that you get used to that, something like that, but at the same time, I could not, if I was going to continue racing, I could not dwell on that negative. I always felt, I must go on. And I felt that person, Ronnie would do the same if that would have happened to me. Life must go on. You're up there. I loved what I was doing so much that nothing in the world could deter my desire to continue. As I said, there were some terrible moments, that I always said the sport to me was extremely rewarding throughout, but had its moments where it was very cruel. When, my brother was hurt both times when he had to quit, he couldn't continue his dream. My younger son, Jeff, when I don't know how he survived that accident when the wheel came off in Indianapolis and that ended his career. And, so I was touched, the family was touched by that, by some of that tragedy, but again, I knew that the danger was there, no question. The risk, I should say, was there. And if you're going to continue doing this, you cannot dwell on that. I always said that. You try to be as smart as you can, to try to, be intelligent and try to minimize your mistakes, if you will. You make a lot of mistakes, but not to make the big mistake. And but you know that you're always going to be potentially a victim of somebody else's mistake, or also equipment failure, which I've had a few of those, but I got away with it. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if that and how to even justify it to some degree. I had to justify it to myself, and that had to be enough. To justify it in general, if people say, "Well, you're crazy," it doesn't make any sense. But it had to make sense to me, and that's how I went on. After tragedies such as that, things are never the same, obviously. But I always look at the positive side, the great memories that we've had together, and so on and so forth. So that's the only way I can put it.
I will get to some listener questions again right now. One is from Dennis. You've participated on many of the greatest races in the world: Le Mans, Sebring, Indy 500, Monaco GP. Which of those races is your personal favorite, and which has been engraved in your memory and which has fascinated you the most?
Well, any of those could be on that given day could have a story in itself. You just mentioned Sebring, for instance. Here's a race in 1970 where we had 3 Ferrari entries, and there were the 2 Spiders and then a coupe, and we were. Eeks and I, we were just gone. We were actually it was Mazzari with me at the time. We were just gone. In that race, we had like 12-lap lead and so forth. And I was ready to leave the track because I had my airplane there. And the next day, I was driving a sprint car race in Pennsylvania. So I said, okay, I leave a little early. Instead, Mauro Fergari said, no, I said, Mario, hold on, maybe stay here. I said, maybe I will want you to get into the third car, which is running third at the time, for the last stint. And I said, I don't know. Well, but I stayed around. And then, what was the actor's name? Steve McQueen, yeah. Then there was... Peter Revson drove most of the race at the time, but he went into the lead, when one of the leading Porsches dropped out, and they said, well, here's Steve McQueen that took the lead, and here was poor Revson was in the car, a poor guy who drove 9 hours out of the 12. And so that's when I said, okay, I will go into, in the other Ferrari, which was Ignazio Giunti and Nino Vaccarella. I asked Giunti, I said, is it okay for me to take it? Yeah, I said, okay. And I drove like a man possessed, in that race. And when we won it, it was really an incredible satisfaction to be able to do that under those circumstances. You know what I mean? It's one of those. And we had some others, that wonderful days, wonderful satisfaction. There were some others that even from a family standpoint, it was a big reward, if you will, being on podium, with my own son, and even an IndyCar race in 1991 was Milwaukee was my son Michael won the race. My nephew John finished third. I'm second. I finished third. 3 of us on podium in an IndyCar race. As a family, all of those things are precious, as you can imagine, because you can never even dream about that happening. But that's where I look at the rewards, of our sport. How rewarding it's been. And there are many. Then when you look at the IndyCar series, Michael and I have been on podium 15 times, together. We finished first and second 5 times, in an IndyCar race. And as a father and son situation, how could you want anything more, you know? So again, you know, we just had those events, and that's the positive side that I look to as far as the sport is concerned, what it's given to us. You know, it's the positive side so far outweighs some of the potential negatives that we experience, you know, through events like we spoke before, you know, that fatalities that touched us very close.
Boah, so viele Themen in einem Abschnitt hier von Mario Andretti aufgeworfen. Erstmal natürlich so ein bisschen der lighthearted Start mit dem Social Media. Wollte sich ja nicht so richtig in die Karten schauen lassen. Da hält er auch viele Geschichten, glaube ich, zurück. Aber spricht ja auch für ihn, dass er da nicht irgendwelche Sachen ausbreitet. Aber die Geschichte mit der Safari fand ich halt schon geil. Also ich weiß nicht, wie es euch ging, aber ich stelle mir dann so vor, wenn ich aus diesem Auto ausgeschlossen werde und ich sehe den Löwen. Ich glaube nicht, dass ich da so ruhig bleiben würde. Also schon eine irre Geschichte, die er da erzählt hat, auch wie er über unterbewertete Fahrer spricht und man immer irgendwie auf Ronnie Peterson kommt. Und ja, dann natürlich diese tragische Weltmeisterschaft 1978, die Mario Andretti errungen hat, in dem letzten Rennen aber dann auch Ronnie Peterson sein Leben verloren hat. Nicht an Ort und Stelle, aber später erst leider. Und das hat dann doch eine Narbe hinterlassen, das merkt man auch. Also ich glaube, das macht auch was mit einem, wenn du diesen Titel gewinnst, für den du so lange gearbeitet hast und dann passiert sowas Tragisches. Das schüttelst du nicht einfach ab und es wirkt auf mich auch so, auch wenn er das anders gesagt hat, dass er es immer noch nicht ganz abgeschüttelt hat. Auch wenn er sagt, dass nach dem Tod von Ronnie Peterson sich seine Sicht auf den Motorsport und auf die Sicherheit und auf alles natürlich nicht verändert hat. Aber ich glaube, es gibt so Momente, so Fahrerkollegen, die sterben, aber auch dann, wenn man mit denen in einem harten Zweikampf ist, auch sogar noch als Teamkollegen irgendwo, dass das schon was mit einem macht und dass es einen schon ein Stück weit verändert. Also so ganz kaufe ich es ihm nicht ab, dass es ihn komplett kalt gelassen hat, aber ja, vielleicht ist es einfach so, dass Profi-Rennfahrer am Ende irgendwo egoistisch sein müssen und das möglichst versuchen müssen abzuschütteln, so schwer das dann ist. Er hat es geschafft, er hat es hinter sich gelassen, er hat aber, glaube ich, trotzdem nochmal eine weitere Erinnerung bekommen, dass es halt schnell vorbei sein kann und dann diese Dankbarkeit beibehalten und ja, seine Liebe für den Motorsport auch noch viele weitere Jahre nach der Formel 1 weitergetragen. Und im letzten Abschnitt gleich sprechen wir auch ein bisschen ausführlicher über Michael Andretti, seinen Sohn, der ja auch sehr talentiert, als sehr talentierter Rennfahrer galt und seine Möglichkeit in der Formel 1 auch suchen wollte, die bei McLaren fast bekommen hätte, aber dann einiges dazwischen kam und dann aus seiner Formel-1-Karriere eigentlich gar nichts mehr wurde. Aber er hatte noch in anderen Rennserien Erfolg. Wir sprechen darüber, wie es ist, wenn man gegen seine Söhne fährt. Also da hört ihr gleich noch einen richtig stolzen Mario Andretti. Da könnt ihr euch richtig drauf freuen. Das fand ich auch eine ganz, ganz geniale Geschichte, die er erzählt hat. Ich verrate nicht so viel. Ihr könnt euch drauf freuen. Der letzte Take, der wird nochmal sehr, sehr interessant. Dann geht es am Ende auch noch um die aktuelle Situation in der Formel 1. Wir haben das Interview vor dem großen Preis von Bahrain aufgenommen. Also da gab es noch keine Ergebnisse oder so. Wir haben aber auch darüber gesprochen, wie es sich mit Formel 1 und Politik verhält. Also wie viel Politik sollte der Sport mitbringen und wie viel Politik sollte der Sport machen. Da ist natürlich Lewis Hamilton im Fokus. Ja, und ich versuche ihn ein bisschen rauszulocken, wer denn für ihn der Greatest of All Time ist, wenn das denn überhaupt funktioniert. Also freut euch drauf, der letzte Take steht gleich an, der letzte Teil unseres Gesprächs mit Mario Andretti, hier bei Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de in unserer neuen Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One. Bleibt dran.
Moin.
Moin.
Hast das Spiel gesehen?
Ja.
War ganz gut, ne?
Der HSV-Talk mit Tanja.
Das ging mir sowas von auf den Sack.
Und Sven.
Ganz provokant gefragt, mit Adler werden wir abgeschieden?
Analysen.
Ich sehe das durchaus positiv.
Hintergründe.
Mit dieser Ausgliederung unterwirft sich die Fußball AG dem Aktienrecht.
Und offene Worte.
Das war einfach nicht schön. Ich will sowas nie wiedersehen.
Der HSV-Talk auf meinsportpodcast.de.
The next question is from Marcel. He wants you to describe the feeling of racing against and with your own sons.
Well, it's very interesting. And actually, my wife is the one that was doing the suffering there because because we didn't give each other any breaks. You know, we were we competed very, very hard against one another. We obviously we were not endanger each other, but I remember very clearly the first time that Michael made a competitive move for me for the lead in an IndyCar race, which was the Meadowlands Grand Prix here in New York. It was a street event, and it was in a hairpin, and we touched wheels, and he took the lead, and I was so upset. You know, I said, "How dare you? You know, little kid, you know, push me on the side, push your dad on the side." And then as he just pulling away from me, I said, "Well, that's my boy." You know,
that's a good dad. That's a good dad.
I was upset, but at the same time, I said, "Well, that's my boy," you know. And then was another one. I said it many times. We talk about this. The closest finish in IndyCar, you know, was in 1986 in Portland Grand Prix, where Michael was leading, and I could not catch him. You know, I was about 12 seconds behind, and 3 laps to go. My engineer shouting at me, said, "Michael's having some fuel pickup problems," you know. So, man, I just stood on it. We're coming down to the finish side by side, and he was in front, you know, just the last second, you know, he had some sputter in the engine. I beat him by this far, wow. You know, 180 miles an hour. So I have the photo. The photo shows him, and he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, you know, and he thought he won. And I said, "No, I won." And on the podium, he was so upset. And somebody said, "Hey, Michael," I said, "You better lighten up." It was Father's Day here in America. You know, it's Father's Day. He says, "Well, happy Father's Day, Dad." But the interesting part is that my wife, the answer is, "Mario, how could you do that to your son? I mean, you know what, you know." I says, "Yeah, that was very easy, you know." So we didn't give each other anything, you know. There were no gifts up there, you know. You had to earn it, and we had a good time doing that. I'll tell you another quick story, you know, not to bore you, but it was here, a local track, 2.5 mile track, you know, the super speedway up here, the Pocono. It's I call it the home track. That's only about 40 minutes away from home. And it was in 1986. It was the 500-mile race, and there was a supporting event, you know, with the Indy lights. And my younger son drove that, and he was on pole for that, and he won that race. And Michael was on pole for the 500, and I won the 500. Between the three of us, we cleaned house that weekend here. And so, like I said, you know, when I bring back those events, I figure, you know, how sweet it is, you know. So we had some of those great moments like that, for sure.
Why do you think Michael's F1 career never took off properly?
I think it was probably gone to the best team at the worst possible time. When Michael was hired to go to McLaren, Ayrton was supposed to go to Williams, and then they had Mika Hakkinen that they hired as the other driver, the other teammate to Michael, and all of a sudden the deal did not happen with Ayrton, and Michael was there, you know, high paid driver, and it started to be difficult, you know, because then Mika Hakkinen was promised a drive, and he was on the sideline. He had nothing, you know, and Mika Hakkinen obviously came almost for free, you know, to McLaren. So it was that political side. And there was also, I don't know if you know, that there was a 1 year where you could not test at the track where you were going to race. There was a new rule. And there's also in practice, the maximum laps you could do counting in and out was 23 laps in practice. And that was a stupid rule that dominated that year. And Michael, going to all this track, everywhere he went, it was the first time, never been able to test or anything. And the only place that he tested a couple of times was Silverstone. And that was with the Honda engine on the McLaren. And he never tested because then they lost the Honda engine for the following year. Then they went to Cosworth, and he never even tried a Cosworth. So again, he had a lot of things going against him. And Michael was used to winning here, in the States. So he was, and he made some mistakes, no question, at the start and so forth. But he was quick. And quite honestly, Ayrton had a lot of respect for Michael. The first race in South Africa, Kailami, Michael had never been there. And he qualified, and he was only half a second off of Senna time, which is half a second, but still, the first time. But, I know that they had two tests, one at Magny-Cours, and Michael and Senna, with the Cosworth, it was difficult, that they didn't have the best competitive situation. But in the race, they finished, they qualified like 12th and 18th, I think. And then the next 2 days that they tested, and both Michael and Ayrton were within 5/100ths of a second in the time, and it would have been in the first two rows together. So that Michael showed that his capability, to do that. But there were so many factors that I fault Michael for not waiting, because Ron Dennis said to Michael toward the end of the season, says, I will have Mika Hakkinen substitute you starting with Italy and finish the season. And I cannot tell you whether I will renew your contract until Ayrton, decides what to do. And that could be maybe November. And Michael said, well, first of all, I begged Ron to let Michael run at least in Italy, which it was good, because then at least he had a podium that starting 16th, in the race. And he had a good podium and nothing given to him either. But at the same time, I think Michael, if he really had the total desire to stay in Formula One, he could have waited. But he said, well, you know what? If he doesn't renew, then I won't have a ride nowhere. So he came back to America, and he took a ride with Chip Ganassi, which was a winning team. And he won the very first race, when he came back here. But nevertheless, there were events that unfortunately didn't really work out for him. But not because he's my son, but I can tell you, if Michael would have stayed there, he would have been world champion with McLaren. I guarantee you.
Looking back on your career and the end of your Formula One career, David wants to know, did it hurt in any way that your last Formula One race was on a casino parking lot?
Yeah, it was an issue there, because with the incredible horsepower of a turbocharged engine, we were getting tremendous amount of vibration, on the rear tires and acceleration. And we had a tough time really putting power down in the car. And during the race, early on, the rear wishbone just broke, and that's it. I didn't crash or anything, but I was out of the race through a mechanical. But the car, just didn't feel right. We just could not get the power down properly. The track was so tight, just very, you were primarily very low gears, and with a turbocharged engine, you had to have, because the response was not very good, normally aspirated. So you had to use very low gears and low corners. And as soon as the power came on, it was a lot of, wheel spinning, if you will. And that created a lot of problems in the suspension. And all of that vibration, just took us out.
Is it somewhat ironic that the last race was on a parking lot of a casino?
Well, I don't know. I guess what you say, it's just unfortunate to some degree, that they couldn't have a little more, a little longer track, or something where you could stretch your legs a little bit more. There was somewhat restricted there, if you will. That same track, I won a champion in my last race of the season in IndyCar. I won there, and then the next year I finished second. So I figured it out.
You made your peace with the track.
Made my peace with Julius Caesar.
Coming a little bit to the end right now, but I want to talk to you about the current era of Formula One, of course. How do you view the dominance of Mercedes, and is it good for the sport to have a dominant team? Because some would say, they're doing the best work, so they deserve the dominance.
Well, you just said it. They're doing the best work and they deserve it. When you look back, it's not the first time that one specific team has dominated for a few years in Formula One. That's been the characteristic in Formula One. We see, look at when Michael Schumacher was in Ferrari, was unbeatable. Williams was unbeatable. McLaren was unbeatable certain times. So, and Mercedes came on, and they were not, absolutely dominating at the beginning, when they rejoined, but all of a sudden things just clicked for them. Everything started clicking, and now the onus is on the other teams to catch up and try to match that. That's what it is. The characteristic of Formula One, when you're your own manufacturer, unfortunately, they're the only ones that have their own engines and so forth, which is got to be some advantage, not to have to rely on other manufacturers on the engines, like say, except for Ferrari, of course, but like Red Bull, for instance, they've had some issues with the engine supplies, but now it looks like they have more control over that. So it's going to be interesting. It's always interesting to see how it's going to turn out. There's so much to look forward to. I can't wait for this weekend again, because of the different, the driver movement that we have seen, and that's interesting. Then you want to see whether Ferrari can pick up somewhere. They really lost their way, we know for some of the reasons. They couldn't upgrade the engine, by rule, and last year. But but they have a tremendous, to me, between Leclerc. The driver lineup is perfect, no question. And again, it'll be interesting to see what Sergio Perez will do, alongside Max Verstappen and things like that. And we'll see, the test the last test they had in Bahrain was not spectacular for Mercedes. I don't know why, but I think probably sandbagging a little bit, but that will, we'll have to see just how that plans out, how they come out of the gate. And again, let's face it though, the Mercedes car, when George Russell substituted, Lewis for that one race, he showed that, the car makes a big difference, and you saw how quickly he was immediately competitive, even vis-a-vis Bottas, and so the Mercedes car is if I would have had a choice, as a driver, of any car up front, I would definitely go with a Mercedes.
Let's talk about Lewis for a second. He seems to be even more popular in the States than he is here in Europe. How do you see the star power, for lack of a better word, that Lewis Hamilton has for Formula One and his political engagement in the Black Lives Matter movement? Do you commend that? Do you think it's sometimes not the place for a racing driver to do that? Or how is your opinion on Lewis Hamilton as the driver and the man behind who wants to serve a greater purpose?
Well, there's no question about he is a driver, Lewis, just what he has done, the quality that he has shown as a driver. On the other side, it's a personal thing. I've expressed my opinion before, and I've been criticized that I don't like to see politics enter the sport. And I always said the beautiful thing about the Olympics is exactly that you have factions from all over the planet, and we all equal, and we all competing for the same thing. And you either win or you don't, no matter what race you are, what background. And Formula One being so international, it's the same thing. And to bring in the politics, which is today, it's so it divides people in so many ways. We've seen this in the United States, like God forbid you say something and it's a little bit, questionable. Then it's like I said, I don't like it if we bring this on ourselves. I think Formula One should stay pure as a sport. Yes, I mean we all have our beliefs and you go on with that, but to get up on the pulpit, to try to push your own cause and something like that. And I don't know. I just, like I said, I think there's a place for politics, and I would like to keep it out of the sport.
There are many questions about who's the greatest driver of all time. In your opinion, can there be a greatest driver of all time? And who would it be if you would have to choose? I like to compare this to boxing. Everybody would say that Muhammad Ali was the greatest boxer of all time, but he never fought in the flyweight division, or I don't know, many lighter divisions. So people say in Formula One, you cannot really say there is a greatest driver of all time, because in the 60s it was different than the 80s, in the 70s different than the 90s, and today is much more different than any day.
That's one that I'm staying out of. Quite honestly, I never ever express myself in that respect of trying to judge other drivers, because, as you said, there's so many factors involved, and you always have. I leave it to the experts, to do that, to evaluate, because it's very judgmental, in so many. And I would find it impossible, to really say about all time. They're talking about Nuvolari, talking about Fangio, they're talking about Michael Schumacher, they're talking about Ayrton Senna, and on and on. And so again, it's I think they all belong up there, on the podium somewhere. But I don't know if you could ever come up properly and fairly to be able to judge the one single one to be the best of all.
Looking back on your Formula One career, Mario, are you satisfied with how it went for you?
I'm very satisfied. I have no regrets whatsoever. I could say, maybe I should have devoted more time, maybe taken up, some opportunities with Ferrari. But again, look back at overall what happened and how the satisfaction that I derived from my career overall. I'm just blessed. I feel I'm very satisfied, and I think I achieved more than I deserve, and because I was very fortunate to have been able to dodge some of the bullets. I was blessed because my career was not interrupted, you know, and I'm fortunate, and I'm in many drivers, great drivers that we lost couldn't say that, obviously. So I take nothing for granted, believe me, as to how lucky and fortunate I've been. So because of that, I always say I count my blessings every day.
And very last question, who will be Formula One World Champion 2021?
I have no
spot. You have to tell me one name right now. Will not let you go if you don't do it.
I'd say Max.
Okay. Why?
Well, the obvious. I mean, he's a great fighter, and I think Red Bull. I have some, feel for Adrian Newey, still there, as the engineer. I work with Adrian. He's the best engineer I've ever had in my entire career, alongside of me for just one season. And looking at his history, if they have an engine that will match the chassis performance, I think they could be. He could be the one.
Okay, Mario Andretti, thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you stay healthy. I hope to see you on the track around the world. And thank you. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure, Kevin.
Er sagt also, Max Verstappen wird Formel-1-Weltmeister 2021. Das war vor dem großen Preis von Bahrain, als Mario Andretti diesen Tipp abgegeben hat. Aber er ist ja nicht ganz von der Hand zu weisen und auch seine Erklärung war sehr stichhaltig. Ebenso fand ich auch seine Erklärung vollkommen legitim zu sagen, dass der Sport und Politik nicht vermischt werden sollten. Das ist ja auch eine Meinung von vielen, dass man das klar trennen sollte, weil der Sport einfach auch eine Ablenkung sein soll von den normalen Themen des Lebens, um einfach das zu genießen, was die Sportler für einen leisten. Also wie seht ihr das? Seht ihr das genauso wie Mario Andretti, dass man das trennen sollte? Dann schreibt es gerne in die Kommentare unter dem Podcast, auf unserer Facebook-Seite. Da könnt ihr uns liken, bei Twitter @startinggridf1, auf Instagram @startinggrid_f1. Also folgt uns überall und kommentiert gerne. Gebt uns euer Feedback zu dieser Ausgabe, zu unserer Premiere, unserer Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One. Heute mit dem Weltmeister von 1978, Mario Andretti. Es war mir eine absolute Ehre, mehr über diesen Mann, diese Familie zu erfahren. Die Geschichte mit Michael Andretti und der Formel 1, dass das nicht funktioniert hat, aber er noch in Amerika seine Karriere gemacht hat und damit ja auch gezeigt hat, dass da Talent geschlummert hat. Natürlich sagst du als Vater, er wäre sicherlich Weltmeister geworden, aber vielleicht wäre es ja auch so gewesen, aber das werden wir niemals erfahren. Ich hoffe, ihr habt eine Menge Neues erfahren von Mario Andretti. Ich hoffe, es hat euch gefallen. Und wir werden, wie gesagt, versuchen, das jetzt jeden Monat einmalig zu machen. Da werden wir einmal in die Vergangenheit schauen mit einem Fahrer aus den verschiedenen Jahrzehnten der Formel 1. Das können Weltmeister sein, das können aber auch Fahrer gewesen sein, die gar nicht so eine große Rolle gespielt haben, zumindest nicht für die breite Öffentlichkeit, aber trotzdem ihre Geschichte zu erzählen haben. Und dafür wollen wir Ihnen die Plattform geben. So herum muss es sein. Ich bedanke mich bei euch fürs Zuhören. Hoffe, dass wir uns schon bald hier auch wieder hören. Abonniert den Podcast bitte überall da, wo ihr Podcasts abonnieren könnt. Wenn ihr mögt, gebt uns gerne eine Rezension auf iTunes. 5 Sterne würden uns natürlich sehr freuen. Und bis zum nächsten Mal. Bleibt ihr bitte gesund, passt auf euch auf und keep racing.
Challenger Corner. Der Tennis-Podcast mit Florian Herr und Andreas Thies. Alles rund um die Turniere unterhalb der ATP-Tour.
In Zusammenarbeit
mit tennistourtalk.com. Challenger Corner auf meinsportpodcast.de